My earliest memory associated with Miss Nancy is of one of my friends suddenly saying about 4:30, maybe 4:45 in the afternoon, "I got to go home now. I've got to watch Miss Nancy." And I'd never heard of Miss Nancy. And so I said, "What's Miss Nancy?" And he goes, "Well, it's a TV show." But a few days later, I turned it on to Channel 2. I think this is the channel it was on. And just happened to catch the beginning of it. She was walking up to the storefront, and I thought, well, this is different. And I was fascinated with the fact that here was this programming that, was meant for me. So I just kind of migrated into watching the show every day.
Long before Miss Nancy made an impact on 60s kids like Michael Martinez, she was born Nancy Tribble in DeLand, Florida in 1930, and a long life full of educating and entertaining lay stretched out before her. The family moved to Tallahassee in 1940, and as a teenager, Tribble started swimming at nearby Wakulla Springs.
She was very, very talented from the get-go, and she went into swimming quite young and was with Newt Perry at Wakulla Springs. And then when the Weeki Wachee Mermaids were formed in Weeki Wachee Springs, she went down there, and she was still a teenager. She was still in high school then. She went to Hollywood to get prepared to do the swimming scenes in a movie, Mr. Peabody's Mermaid. I think that was her senior year in high school.
After graduating from FSU, the now married Nancy Benda began her career as an educator. And though she started teaching at the front of the classroom, she quickly caught on to a new advancement: televised education. In 1962, she auditioned to teach a new televised social studies course and won the role. Rhett Bryson, who was then a WFSU camera operator, recalls how the program, A Nation's Story, came to be.
And it came upon me to apply for a new job that they established with Nancy Benda. They wanted to do Puppets and Nancy, teaching fifth grade social studies, and she had come from the Leon County school system. So I met with her and met with Keith Carlson, who was going to be the director of the show. And we agreed that I would work on there and produce puppets. So as time went by, they got this idea we could do another show. It was so popular that we developed the idea of Miss Nancy's Store, done live, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And she would come in the store, and each day would have a kind of a theme to it or the other. There were three main characters that I did on the show. Professor Alton was in a theater environment with a curtain that opened and closed. Then there was the dragon in the library. Nancy would pull books out, and the dragon would come out of a hole in the wall. And as I recall, there was a sign above the hole that said, "Quiet!" because it was a library. And his name was Dewey because of the Dewey Decimal System. And he was Dewey the Decimal Dragon. Then to the left of that was a brick wall. There was a potbelly stove beside the brick wall. And in the brick wall, a section came out, and a character named Vince lived there, and he was a hippopotamus washer. He always said to Nancy he didn't have much work. Nancy wrote the scripts in collaboration with Keith and me. They were very loose, and we improvised a lot of it. And we would rehearse the show maybe 4 o'clock. We would have a camera rehearsal, camera blocking. We would take a brief break, and then we would do the show live at 5 o'clock. And a live performance is pretty exciting.
That she not only had animals and puppets on the show, but she would have people come in, like somebody with their guitar and sing songs, or come in and do some reading, that kind of thing. It was a really good show.
Although the program brought in high ratings, funding ran out, And in 1967, after just 18 months, Miss Nancy's store was canceled.
And when I left the show, one of my fellow actors from Florida State, Sammy Killman, took over my puppet characters, as I understand. The show did not last long after that, I seem to remember.
The state of Florida cut the funding for that program. And it was, I remember that was a big thing in her life, and as I recall, in the life of WFSU, because it was the #1 program.
I was thinking about the show years and years ago and said, I think I'll contact WFSU and see if I can get them to transcribe those videos for me. And I found out that they had them, but they had destroyed them about 2 weeks before I made that call. I just missed it that close to having a record of the work I had done there.
Although Miss Nancy's store was never revived, it didn't go down without a fight. Pleas from children and parents all across the state begged for some way to keep the show on the air.
I've read some of the tribute letters that have been published on the archive site, and I'm just blown away that other kids were as fascinated and as devoted to the show as I was. And I can imagine, I know how disappointed I felt when I knew I could no longer see the show. They must have felt equal disappointment, if not even stronger disappointment. It was groundbreaking in a way that it stayed with me.
Even after Miss Nancy's store went off the air, Nancy Tribble Benda devoted her life to educating children. She acted as the director of Equal Opportunity Programs at the Florida Department of Education until retiring in 2003. And she worked closely to enforce Title IX in Florida's public schools. For many decades before her passing in 2015, Nancy was a member of the Zonta Club of Tallahassee, a women's rights organization, and her fellow Zontians remember her devotion to education and service fondly.
The Zonta Club of Tallahassee was founded in 1980, so we're about 41 years old. And Nancy, I believe, was a charter member or joined very shortly after that. She was president of the local club 2008-2009, but way before then had substantial mark on the club. And she was instrumental in her role at DOE with equality in sports and getting legislation passed in 1993 here in Florida, and worked at making that legislation actually work in practice for many years after that, really till she retired from DOE.
She was a go-getter, and she was also very firm in her beliefs with regards how things must be done to improve the lives of women and girls. She was a very quiet person, very reserved, but very efficient and very forward-thinking.
She was a fierce friend, and we miss Nancy.
She lived a very colorful life, but she never bragged about those things. You had to draw out of her story. Tell me about the mermaid. Tell me about being underwater all the time with a breathing tube. She had a fascinating life, had lived life fully. That was who she was for sure.
I view what Nancy Benda did as a pioneering effort. I think she does deserve credit for laying the groundwork for shows like Mr. Rogers. I wish Miss Nancy's store had survived and become something like that, because it was both a similar and a different format.
While Miss Nancy's store was short-lived, Nancy Tribble Benda's legacy lives on in the work she accomplished as an educator and in the memories of those who tuned into her program. For WFSU, I'm Devin Bittner.